Having arrived at Bethphage on the Mount of Olives, Jesus sent 2 disciples ahead.
Go over to the village across from you. You'll find a donkey tethered there, her colt with her. Untie her and bring them to me. If anyone asks, say the master needs them.
This is the full story of what was sketched earlier by the prophet. Tell Zion's daughter, look, your king's on his way, poised and ready, mounted on a donkey, on a colt, full of a pack animal. The disciples did as Jesus commanded. They led the donkey and colt out, laid some of their clothes on them, and Jesus mounted. Nearly everyone in the crowd threw garments on the road in a royal welcome. Others cut branches from the trees and threw them out as a welcome mat. Crowds went ahead as well as followed, all calling out,
Hosanna to David's son. Blessed is he who comes in God's name. Hosanna in the highest heaven.
As he entered Jerusalem, the whole city was shaken and abuzz with gossip and speculation. Unnerved, people were asking,
What's going on here? Who is this? What's going on here? Who is this?
This is the prophet Jesus, the one from Nazareth in Galilee.
On the first of the days of unleavened bread, the disciples came to Jesus.
Where do you want us to prepare your Passover meal?
Enter the city. Go up to a certain man and say, the teacher says, my time is near. My disciples and I plan to celebrate the Passover meal at your house.
The disciples followed Jesus' instructions to the letter and prepared for the meal. Our scene shifts to the upper room. After sunset, Jesus and the 12 are sitting around the table.
I have something very important to say to you. One of you is going to hand me over to the conspirators. The one who hands me over is someone I eat with daily, one who passes me food at the table. In one sense, the Son of Man is entering into a way of treachery well marked by the Scriptures. No surprises here. In another sense, that man who turns him in turns traitor to the Son of Man. Better never to have been born than to do this.
Judas said, "It isn't me, is it, Rabbi?"
Don't play games with me, Judas.
During the meal, Jesus took and blessed the bread, broke it, and gave it to his disciples.
Take and eat. This is my body.
Then, taking the cup and thanking God, he gave it to them.
Drink this, all of you. This is my blood, God's new covenant poured out for many people for the forgiveness of sins. I'll not be drinking from this cup again until that new day when I'll drink it with you in the kingdom of my Father.
They sang a hymn and went directly to the Mount of Olives. The scene is now one of darkness, nighttime in the garden.
Before the night's over, you're going to fall to pieces because of what happens to me. This is a scripture, there is a scripture that says, I'll strike the shepherd, helter-skelter, the sheep will be scattered. But after I am raised up, I, your shepherd, will go ahead of you, leading the way to Galilee.
Peter said, "Even if everyone else falls to pieces on account of you, I won't."
Don't be so sure. This very night before the rooster crows upon the dawn, you will deny me 3 times.
Even if I had to die with you, I would never deny you.
We would never deny you.
Then Jesus went with them to a garden called Gethsemane and told his disciples,
Stay here while I go over there and pray.
Taking along Peter and 2 of the sons of Zebedee, he plunged into an agonizing sorrow.
The sorrow is crushing my life out. Stay here and keep vigil with me. My Father, if there is any way, get me out of this. But please, not what I want. You. What do you want? Can't you stick it out with me for a single hour? Stay alert. Be in prayer so you don't wander into temptation without even knowing that you're in danger. There's a part of you that is eager, ready for anything. But there's another part that's as lazy as an old dog sleeping by the fire. My Father, oh Father, there's no other way than this, drinking this cup to the dregs. I'm ready. Do it your way. Are you going to sleep on and make a night of it? My time is up. The Son of Man is about to be handed over to the sinners. Get up, let's get going. My betrayer is here.
The words were barely out of his mouth when Judas, the one from the 12, showed up, and with him a gang from the high priests and leaders brandishing swords and clubs. The betrayer had worked out a sign with them.
The one I kiss. That's the one. Seize him.
Friend,
How
why
are you, Rabbi?
this charade?
Then they came on him, grabbed him, and roughed him up. One of those with Jesus pulled his sword, and taking a swing at the chief priest's servant, cut off his ear.
Put your sword back where it belongs. All who use swords are destroyed by swords. Don't you realize that I'm able right now to call my Father in 12 companies, more if I want them, of fighting angels would be here, battle ready. But if I did that, how would the scriptures come true that say this is the way that it has to be? What is this? Coming after me with swords and clubs as if I were some dangerous criminal? Day after day I have been sitting in the temple teaching you, and you never so much as lifted a hand against me. You've done it this way to confirm and fulfill the prophetic writings.
The gang that had seized Jesus led him before Caiaphas, the chief priest, where the scholars and leaders had assembled. Peter followed at a safe distance until they got to the chief priest's courtyard. Then he slipped in and mingled with the servants. The high priests, conspiring with the Jewish council, tried to cook up charges against Jesus in order to sentence him to death. But even though many stepped up, making one false accusation after another, nothing was believable. Finally, 2 men came forward with this.
He said, I can tear down this temple of God, and after 3 days rebuild it.
The chief priest asserted. What do you have to say to this accusation? I command you, by the authority of the living God, to say if you are the Messiah, the Son of God.
You yourself said it. And that's not all. Soon you'll see it for yourself. The Son of Man seated at the right hand of the Mighty One, arriving on clouds of heaven.
At that, the chief priest lost his temper.
He blasphemed! Why do we need witnesses to accuse him? You all heard him blaspheme! Are you going to stand for such blasphemy?
Death. That seals his death sentence.
Then they were spitting in his face and banging him around. They jeered as they slapped him.
Prophesy, Messiah. Who did you in that time?
All this time, Peter was sitting out in the courtyard. A servant girl came up to him and said, "You were with Jesus the Galilean."
Peter said, I don't know what you're talking about.
Someone else said, "This man was with Jesus the Nazarene."
I swear I never laid eyes on the man.
A bystander said, "You've got to be one of them. Your accent gives you away."
I don't know the man.
Just then a rooster crowed, and Peter remembered what Jesus had said. He went out and cried profusely. In the first light of dawn, all the high priests and leaders met and put the finishing touches on the plot to kill Jesus. Then they tied him up and paraded him to Pilate the governor. Judas, the one who betrayed him, realized that Jesus was doomed. Overcome with remorse, he gave back the 30 silver coins to the high priests.
I've sinned. I betrayed an innocent man.
What do we care? That's your problem.
Judas threw the silver coins into the temple and left. Then he went out and hanged himself. Jesus was placed before the governor, who questioned him, "Are you the king of the Jews?"
You say so.
But when the accusations rained down hot and heavy from the high priests and leaders, he said nothing.
Pilate questioned, do you hear that long list of accusations? Aren't you going to say something?
Jesus kept his silence, not a word from his mouth. The governor was impressed, really impressed. It was custom during the feast for the governor to pardon a single prisoner named by the crowd. At the time, they had named the infamous Barabbas in prison.
With the crowd before him, Pilate asked, which prisoner do you want me to pardon? Barabbas or Jesus, the so-called Christ?
But the high priests and leaders had talked the crowd into a frenzy.
Which of the two do you want me to pardon?
Barabbas!
Then what do I do with Jesus, the so-called Christ?
Crucify him!
But for what crime?
Crucify him!
When Pilate saw that he was getting nowhere and that a riot was imminent, he took a basin of water and washed his hands in full sight of the crowd, saying,
I'm washing my hands of responsibility for this man's death. From now on, it's in your hands. You're the judge and jury.
We'll take the blame. We and our children after us.
Then he pardoned Barabbas and had Jesus whipped before handing him over for crucifixion. The soldiers took Jesus into the governor's palace and got the entire brigade together for some fun. They stripped him and dressed him in a red toga. They fashioned a crown from branches of a thorn bush and sat it on his head. They put a stick in his right hand for a scepter. Then they knelt before him in mocking reverence.
Bravo, King of the Jews! Bravo!
Then they spit on him and hit him on the head with a stick. When they had their fun, they took off the toga and put his own clothes back on him. Then they proceeded out to the crucifixion. After they had finished nailing him to the cross and were waiting for him to die, they whiled away the time by throwing dice for his clothes. Above his head they had posted the criminal charge against him. This is Jesus, the King of the Jews. Along with him they also crucified 2 criminals, one to his right and the other to his left. People passing along the road jeered.
You brag that you could tear down the temple and then rebuild it in 3 days. So show us yourself. Save yourself. If you're really God's son, come down from that cross.
The high priests, along with the religious scholars and leaders, were right there mixing it up with the rest of them, having a great time poking fun at him.
He saved others. He can't save himself. King of Israel is he. Then let him get down from that cross. We'll all become believers then. He was so sure of God. Well, let him rescue his son now. If he wants him. He did claim to be God's son, didn't he?
Even the 2 criminals crucified next to him joined in the mockery. From noon to 3, the whole earth was dark. Around mid-afternoon, Jesus groaned out of the depths.
Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani. My God, why have you abandoned me?
Some of the bystanders who heard him said,
He's calling for Elijah.
One of them soaked a sponge soaked in sour wine and lifted it on a stick so he could drink. But Jesus, again crying out loudly, breathed his last. At that moment, the temple curtain was ripped in 2, top to bottom. There was an earthquake, and rocks were split in pieces. What's more, tombs were opened up, and many bodies of believers asleep in their graves were raised. After Jesus' resurrection, they left the tombs, entered the holy city, and appeared to many. The captain of the guard and those with him, when they saw the earthquake and everything else that was happening, were scared to death.
This has